Yesterday, Mike covered 3 special steps to add to your contracts, whether you are a buyer or a seller, correct? To help strengthen your contracts. They are the remove 8-day unilateral, okay? The other one is a per diem. In the event the sale does not close on or before the scheduled closing date, due to no fault of the seller may, at his or her option, agree to mutually extend the contract and charge the buyer a per diem extension fee equal to $100 per day, okay? And the other language that goes along with it. So, and then there was one other, the reverse seller due diligence. I'm not going to beat a dead horse about these. They're here. They're easy. They're accessible. They're right here in your Remind, and it would literally be 2 or 3 mouse clicks, and they're in there, okay? There are some additional ones, okay, that have been in here, are always here, and you can use these. You guys know what do we say? You're real estate agents. You're not what? This doesn't apply to her. You're not attorneys. She is an attorney, okay? So don't try to write legal language. It's already here. It's available to you. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like probably a dozen more that you can add to your offers. When you're writing an offer, you can counter these in your offer if you have the listing. Okay, seller's market appraisal below purchase price with auto price adjustment. Okay, that sounds like something a used car salesman would say. But it reads very simply, in the event the property does not appraise for at least the purchase price, buyer shall pay up to X dollars in all cash funds over the appraised value at closing, not to exceed the original purchase price. That's language that's where most agents will stop, okay? However, in our case, and I think Dwayne wrote this, or was involved in writing this and did so in cooperation with Moreno. In the event the all cash amount the buyer agrees to pay plus the appraised value, in other words, the adjusted price, fall below the original purchase price, buyer and seller agree to sign an amendment changing the purchase price to the adjusted price. Okay? So that additional statement locks them in now to reducing their sales price. Whereas if you wait and you don't have this language in there, they can simply say, nope, I'm not going to adjust my sales price. In which case, the only logical conclusion that you representing the buyer have is to terminate the contract. Okay? If you don't want to terminate the contract, don't terminate the contract. Write this in at the listing. And again, what did Mike say? Most of the people don't read this stuff. It's happened. We've had adjustments come in low, and this language was in there, and the listing agent comes back to us and says, okay, well, I'll do the amendment. No, you won't. It's already here. What? We signed that? Yeah, you did. All right. So keep that in mind. All right. That is another one that is very, very valuable. Here's one. Instead of messing with the potential for additional money for a seller because of an appraisal, you can write this one in there. Seller's market. Buyer agrees to pay additional cash to seller at the closing. Okay? This doesn't affect the sales price of the house. In addition to the purchase price of the property, buyer shall pay seller at closing the sum of X dollars for seller to use for any of the seller's costs associated with this transaction, including but not limited to seller's attorney fees, cost to close, real estate commissions, fees paid to community association to get a clearance letter, seller's share of ad valorem tax. Basically, this is a way to increase the sales price but not affect the appraised value.
It's like reverse closing costs almost?
Yes. Okay. Good question. I don't know the answer. I have not seen it, and I personally have not used it yet, but that doesn't mean it's not an option. Okay. I think I recommended it to one other agent in this office when they were doing something, but I don't know if it ended up in the final draft of it. Okay. So another great little tool to separate your offer from the rest of the pack. This is the other one. Seller's market, property not appraising, not a basis for the seller to get their earnest money back. Again, if you offer this up front, it's a way to differentiate you from the rest of the crowd. It's pretty simple in its language. Seller's market, buyer shall pay cash for the difference between the seller's price and the appraised value. This is the one that basically falls short of the price adjustment. It's good, but if somebody keys in on the fact that you're requiring me to adjust the price, this would be the alternative to use. Okay? If you're going to do an appraisal gap, when you do a cash offer, you want to see proof of funds that they have the cash to be able to do it, right? If somebody is telling you that they're going to cover $10,000 in the gap, that's a lot of money. Don't you think you, as the agent, want to see the source of those funds and know that they're there before you tell your client to sign up for this? Yes. This one is, if you're going to do appraisal gap coverage, I would automatically add this one to it, which says the buyer warrants that the buyer has, in addition to the needed cash to close, sufficient funds to pay the difference, if any, between the appraised price and the property of the property and the sales price. Buyer agrees to supply within 3 days, 48 hours, whatever you do, that the buyer has at least the $10,000 that you've told me you were going to cover in the gap coverage. Okay, so again, and I've used this in writing offers, and it goes one step further than just saying we'll pay a difference if there is one, but here's our proof of funds and the evidence that we have the means and ability and capacity to do so. Make sense? Escalation clause with a cap. We should all be pretty familiar with this one. And up until the time that the buyer's offer is accepted in writing, buyer hereby offers $1,000 more than the next bona fide offer. You can do it $1,000, you can do $10,000, you can do $5,000, you can do $500 if you want to. I would say probably no less than $1,000 because you're splitting hairs. The goal is to differentiate. $500 is not much of a differentiation. Okay. So that one is one that a lot of people are familiar with. Some of these others are a little bit more obscure. This is a great one. Okay. This Mike talked about on Wednesday that a lot of agents are putting multiple properties under contract. All right. If you are not doing that, or if you are the listing agent and you want to make sure that the other person is not doing that, this would be the special stip that you put in your counteroffer. Buyer warrants that the buyer is not currently a party to any other purchase and sale contract to buy real property within 100 miles of here. Okay? This alone would ensure that somebody's not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. Okay, so for every move, there's a counter move. Here's another one. If your client wants to do a higher amount of earnest money, but maybe they don't have those funds today and they're going to have them later, you can plug into this additional earnest money to be deposited when certain conditions are met. Okay, so staged earnest money. Buyer agrees to pay earnest money in 2 installments. The first installment of X will be paid by the buyer to hold within X days of the binding agreement date. The second installment of Y will be paid to the buyer to hold within X days of the binding agreement date, unless prior to that time has terminated to the agreement. The failure of a consistency to which this agreement is subject to buyer's lawful termination. So in other words, it's other conditions. But the goal is to try to differentiate your offer with a higher amount of earnest money, and you can stage that. It all doesn't have to be at one time. Okay? Might be helpful. Everything else we have talked about. So those are some additional special steps that you can use and add to your buyer contracts to be able to strengthen your offer and differentiate you from the crowd. And you can also add them to your counter offers if you are the listing agent, again, to differentiate and to determine just exactly how badly that buyer wants the house. Sir.
So I unfortunately missed yesterday. If you're the listing agent and you want to make sure these steps are in there, can you just upload it to your documents and say must use provided contract?
That's one strategy. I don't know if I would recommend it. Okay. You know, I personally, you can. I've seen some agents do this, and I have done it on a couple of occasions where you say what a recommended offer might look like, and you spoon feed the listing agent information. One could make an argument that if you are putting that much information and making it that rigid, you might be excluding somebody that might otherwise present an offer. Yeah. In which case, you know, you might be looking at.
They might accept it on the counter even if they're not going to include it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would probably just entertain the offers that come in, and then if you want to strengthen your offer because you have multiple offers, this is where you can add them to a counter offer to it. Okay? Other questions? That's all I got today. Let's go out there and make it happen.